Hello, we come to present the learning evidence of nature of life. This is the timeline and we start since the 16th century. On the 16th century, the universe went from being exclusively our solar system, surrounded by a spherical background without the thickness of the fixed stars, to being a more complex theory.
In the 18th century, the naturalists that studied animals and plants attributed to the diversity of species in the world allegedly to an event of divine creation.
Following up in the 18th century, Carlos Linnaeus was creationist and fixist. He was born in 1707 and died in 1788.
In the same century, George Louis Leclerc thought that there were three causes by which species could be modified: diet, climate, and customs.
In 1735, Carlos Linnaeus was the first to set the rules. First, he determined that species would be ordered in a classification of taxonomic categories.
In the 19th century, according to Lamarck, its existence was exclusively deduced from the morphologic comparison by experts of different groups of animals and plants.
In 1809, Baptiste Lamarck appealed to explain the origin of the first living beings, the microbes.
In 1831, in Galapagos, Darwin obtained the best evidence in favor of evolution.
In 1835, when he returned home, the specialist showed him that he had said a total of 13 never.
In 1838, the idea of natural selection came untimely to Darwin.
In 1850, Louis Pasteur designed an experiment in which he demonstrated depasteurization.
In 1855, Darwin began to write a book to postulate the theory of natural selection.
In 1858, Darwin received a letter from Alfred Wallace. Alfred began to think that the species changed with time and had read influences similar to Darwin's.
In 1859, thanks to the letter, Darwin ended up writing The Origin of the Species, which he published.
In 1866, Halkett created a system of three kingdoms of living beings. He designed Protista to place an all unicellular organism.
In the 20th century, other processes have been discovered that could work by themselves in the absence of the selection or in a complementary way with it.
In 1923, Oparin proposed that life on Earth had originated in a primary atmosphere.
In 1925, Edward Chatham's published work with a different assumption to that of kingdoms.
In 1927, George Lemaitre deduced that the universe did not collapse upon itself, originating from a great explosion that impulses all matter from a point where it was gathered before.
In 1928, Edwin Hubble discovered that the stillness of the universe was mere appearance.
In 1932, Hubble also discovered that there existed galaxies other than the Milky Way.
In 1939, Herbert Copeland performed a relatively obvious and predictable maneuver of Hubble's proposal.
And in 1948, George Gamow predicted that starting from an infinitely dense heated beginning of matter, an enormous amount of photons must have been released through the cosmos.
In 1953, Stanley L. Miller designed a system of tubes and flasks isolated from the exterior to simulate the hydrosphere, as well as the atmosphere of primitive Earth.
In 1959, Robert Whittaker notably argued for a reality hidden from the sight of all biologists. He documented a large group of species that some of them were macroscopic and the other ones were microscopic.
In 1960, many scientists proposed the existence of a first biologic world based on RNA molecules, previous to the ones we presently know based on DNA, RNA, and proteins.
In 1977, Carl Woese studied the sequence of nucleotides of genes originating from a diversity of species representing all kingdoms. He tried to verify the genealogic relationship between the kingdoms.
In 1980, small molecules of RNA were discovered in living beings.
And 2021, we are making this timeline for biology.
Thank you for your attention.